Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. Well, today I am posing the question, should you buy a Pagani design watch? Well, in reality, I can't answer that question for you because there's too many sort of factors there, and it depends on who you are. Depends on your finances, depends on what you want out of a watch, depends on what you're doing with the watch. But what I can do is talk about Pagani design, talk about the perceived positives of them and the perceived negatives of them. Now, from my perspective, I like them. I think they're a good watch, but they're not perfect. What I can say is that I feel very comfortable talking to you today about Pagani design because I've owned lots of them. That's right, I've owned lots of Pagani design watches. So I feel that I have a fairly good understanding of what the brand has to offer to you guys, what it has to offer me, and what the downfalls and the positives of the watches are. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk about what I see as positives and what I can certainly see and what I can certainly understand what some people think are negatives about the watch. And then basically sort of just give you that more information. I will certainly then sum it up by giving my two favorite Pagani design watches at the end of the video. Well, let's start off on the positives because I like to see the positives in everything, especially when it comes to watches because I love watches and I love being positive about watches. And certainly one of the biggest positives about Pagani design are the prices. They are absolutely either an affordable watch for everybody or an achievable price for everybody. Now, some people may watch this and they have some very lovely watches in their collections and they think, why are you buying this homage watch? Why would you spend that money on that? Well, the reason is because it's affordable to us. It's money that we are able to spend or are willing to be able to spend on the watch. And not everybody is able to spend large sums of money on watches, especially with a watch like this that has such good specifications. And that's the next one, specifications. Because it is nice to have a watch with some nice specs. It's nice to have the sapphire crystal. It's nice to have a solid and linked watch with solid stainless steel bracelet with a milled clasp. It really is very nice. When you compare it against other watches with some hollow end links, with a pressed clasp, with a rolled bracelet, there is a big difference in those watches. There's a big difference in the feel in your hand. And sapphire crystal does give it a much more premium feel to it. And they do come generally with a Seiko movement. And who can ask for much more than a Seiko movement? I certainly can't because they are such great movements. And when you bring it back to that price, you're getting a Seiko movement, you're getting a great bracelet, you're getting sapphire crystal. Well, how can you ask for much more than that at that price? You then also get a watch that looks good because they have some very good looking watches. There's a particular reason for that, and I guess we'll talk about that in other perceived negatives. So good designs, good specs at a price that you can either afford or you can save up for and you can definitely justify spending. And they are available. Some watches aren't always available. There are some amazing watches at amazing prices that look and feel fantastic, but you just can't buy them. So this one is always going to be available. So having that availability is absolutely fantastic as well. Now I know there's a lot more positives to these watches as well, but I don't want to go on for too long. So let's jump into the perceived negatives. And I'm saying perceived because it really depends on you and what you think is a negative of a watch. And even if it's a negative, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. So let's talk about the name, Pagani Design, because not everybody loves that name. Not everybody feels affection towards that name. And I certainly understand that. For me, I don't mind it too much. I think it's okay. What I like most about it is how they actually have moved it into a sort of a logo, that PED. I think that looks quite good, especially when they put it on the crown. But I can certainly understand that not everybody wants Pagani design written on a watch, especially when Pagani is actually a car, especially when design doesn't actually relate to these watches because they're generally homage watches. And that is really the second point, isn't it? That these are generally homage watches. What I do like of them, however, is that they're not always exact sort of photocopies. They're not exact replicas of watches. They do take sort of heavy inspiration from watches. You can absolutely generally tell that's going to be a homage of another watch, but they quite often mix it up a little bit. And I'm not sure if they do that from a design perspective or if they do that from a function perspective. I guess I understand some things are going to be cheaper to produce, or if a date window is in a specific spot for a particular movement, it's easier just to leave that date window there. But either way, it is mixed up a little bit. It is not a one-for-one replicas, but they are definitely homage watches. I'm not going to try and say that they're not. They are homage watches, and if you don't like homage watches, well, that's definitely going to be a negative. For me, it's almost a positive because some of these watches, I really like the idea of owning some of these lovely watches, but I know I'm never going to own them, either because of price, because perhaps they're an amazing watch which I like the idea of owning, but if I sort of put them on a list of amazing watches that I would like to own, they might be number 10. And I can't afford 10 luxury, super expensive watches, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to sort of feel and experience that watch. Another positive of the Homage watch is if you're thinking about buying that much more expensive watch and you're not really sure if you want to spend that money on it, sometimes it's good to get one of these cheaper ones. It just gives you a bit of a sense of a feel and a look of it and see whether you do actually sort of connect with that sort of look of watch on your wrist. But I certainly understand that not everybody likes Homage watches, and that's why it is a negative. And that sort of leads us into sort of quality. Obviously, this is an affordable watch. It's not a luxury high-end watch. Although it might be looking like a much more expensive watch, it isn't. So the quality of them aren't always perfect. Fit and finish isn't always perfect. The lume is definitely not always perfect. The bezel action is not always perfect. However, I think they are perfectly fine, especially when you take into account price. Now, a lot of people say, well, don't worry about price. If there's an issue with it, there's an issue with it. And I get that, even if you're spending $50 or if you're spending $5,000, if there's an issue, then that's a problem. However, when we think about bezel action and there's a little bit of back play, well, that doesn't change how the watch works. The bezel still works, it's just not perfect. And when you're paying a little bit less money, well, I'm sort of able to sort of understand that and be okay with it. Lume. Lume to me is not the most important thing on a watch. I love it when there's great lume on a watch, but it's not a number one priority for me. I don't want to pay excessive amounts more money to get excessive amounts more lume, and in this sort of style watch, so I'm sort of okay with that. But you also need to be aware of it, and you need to be okay that the bezels may not be perfect. You need to be aware that the lume may not be perfect. You need to know that there might be a few little sharp edges here and there on the bracelet. That's all part and parcel of getting one of these watches. But you sort of understand that, and you sort of appreciate that, and you then take into account in your sort of thoughts and decisions about whether you want to buy one of these watches or not. So in summary, I think they are great watches. They're affordable. They are powered by Seiko movements. You get a lot of good specifications, but you need to be okay with the fact that they're a Homage watch, that they have a name that you may not like, and the fit and finish isn't always perfect. And at this sort of price range, I think that's perfectly fine. If they were trying to charge $500 for a Pagani design, I'd be having a very different conversation with you guys today. But there are two watches, in my experience, from Pagani design that has really stood out to me. Firstly is the PD 1694. This is sort of a homage, obviously, of a Rolex Submariner, sort of more of the sort of vintage style. And there was something just very special about this watch for me. It wasn't perfect. It was a little bit rough. It had a few fit and finish issues, but I just connected with it and I really, really enjoyed wearing it. And I think it's one of the best watches from Pagani design on a bracelet that you can buy. But then there's my absolute favorite watch from Pagani design, the YS003, the Pilot watch. This really blows my mind because the watch is so good. There is no fit and finish issues. The polishing is fantastic. The brushing is great. The movement's good. It's such a good looking watch. However, it does come on a bit of a crap strap. So you're going to have to put a better strap onto it. Well, at least I certainly wanted to put a better strap on it when I owned this watch. And I think for this sort of money, especially this one, which is very affordable when it comes down to the Pagani design range, it's amazing. I loved it. And I think it is absolutely a worthy watch to own, even if you don't like Homage watches, even if you don't like the name Pagani design. This one is a standout for me. So what do you guys think of Pagani design? I'm sure there'll be some sort of strong opinions to be held by you guys. Please leave those strong opinions down in the comments. I love hearing passionate people talking about watches, positive or negative. It doesn't bother me. It is just nice to see the passion from you guys about a subject that I feel passionate about. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I absolutely know that there'll be some Pagani designs in my future, which means there'll be some Pagani design reviews for your future as well. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon.